Hello, my Astro family. This is Lada from astrolada.com with your May 2020 horoscopes. Yay, I'm back, feeling a bit better. And I have invited this month evolutionary astrologer Bryan to help me to lead you through the spiritual and karmic meaning of this month. And I will cover the more practical, mundane day-to-day influence of the month. And Bryan is the most spectacular astrologer I've seen. The first week we introduced him, he had 500 individual orders, and they have carried on like that ever since. So he broke the record with us, and you'll see why. He's amazing. So I'm very excited to present you the May 2020 horoscopes. And by the way, on May 16th, Bryan is making his first webinar for astrolada.com for our audience, which is only $63 down from $90, on past life astrology, how to read the past lives in your horoscope. And I think it will be our most successful webinar to date as well, because the topic is fascinating. So let's begin. Cancer, May 2020, and Bryan will lead you through the karmic lessons and the karmic integration of the nodes in Cancer and Capricorn, and I'll carry on with the rest of the May influences. Hi, Bryan.
Hello. Well, let's look at the nodes of the moon here. Now, we have what are called the transiting nodes, where the nodes are in the sky today. They change signs about once every year and a half. And then, of course, you have the nodes of your own personal birth chart. And the style of astrology I practice is known as evolutionary astrology. Really, the philosophy at the foundation to this approach is that ultimately we're here to evolve. And that's the way I use astrology. How can we understand the astrological weather that's filtering through our consciousness, okay, to put our personal growth and evolution into hyperdrive? So the subject of today, obviously, is the nodes. And if you're interested in your own personal birth chart nodes, from my perspective, it's the way to read the karma. And I can actually tell your past life story by reading the nodes of the moon in your chart. And that's the subject of the webinar coming up next month, May 16th. So if you're interested in learning more about your karmic predicament and answering that key question of why, it's like, okay, I have the birth chart that I have, but why? What's the purpose of me using this thing? You know, what are my paths of evolution? It gives you an extra layer of context and gives us some understanding of the unfolding journey of your soul. Now, the nodes of the sky where they are today is representing the collective karma. And the transiting nodes for you Cancer risings out there, you have the south node of the moon in Capricorn in the 7th house of your chart. And then you have the north node of the moon in Cancer, the same as your rising sign, okay, in the 1st house of the chart. So the 7th house, 1st house axis, Capricorn, Cancer axis, respectively. Now, always when looking at the south node of the moon, both by sign and house, we want to look at the symbols a little bit more negatively. Okay, a little bit more cockeyed, you know, because we want to understand, well, let's say the darker side of it. You know, it's like we're trying to move beyond the south node, the collective karma of the habitual energy that's represented through the lens of Capricorn for the last year and a half. And that's been playing out in your life in the 7th house. And we want to reach this Cancer north node. That's the karmic medicine for all of us. And by working with the transiting nodes in our own personal life, we can all do our little part within, you know, the family of humans here on Earth to help us all reach the north node in Cancer in this co-creative process we find ourselves in. So, looking at Capricorn 7th house a little bit more negatively, we recognize Capricorn is the sea goat, you know, kind of that's the archetype. It's an impossible creature, you know. But it can climb any mountain, cross any sea, you know. It's about endurance. It's about, at least emotionally, kind of sucking it up, pushing the pain body aside. I'll feel that later. I'm on top of it, you know. Shit happens, you know, that sort of energy. Another negative side of Capricorn is control and fear of losing control. Now, here it is in a very intimate context, being the 7th house of intimacy, the 7th house of marriage. I like to give it a little bit more breathing room and call it the house of our soul family. People we can count on one hand. Yes, our life partners, of course, but also our best friendships. People we go to each other's funerals is one way you could look at it. So, house of intimacy. Looking at that a little bit more negatively, we could say inequality in relationship. Of course, the high end of the 7th house is equality, which is what we all want to get to interdependent relationships instead of codependent ones. But when looking at your life through the lens of the South Node currently in this house for you, it's like asking yourself this very introspective question. As a Cancer, you're pretty good at that. This is your wheelhouse. Asking yourself the question, what relationships in my life feel unequal? Now, Capricorn, again, is about controlling yourself. And here we have the remedy, the medicine, Cancer, your own rising sign, as the corrective to that. Cancer is ultimately about feelings. So getting away from perhaps controlling your feelings. Now, Cancer is known as the crab in astrology. And if you think about crabs, they have a shell. And as a Cancer rising, or if you have a Cancer sun or moon even, strong Cancer energy in your psyche, those archetypes running up and down your spine, you can fall into the trap of hiding behind the shell of the crab. And if we're doing that in our relationships, those relationships are therefore unequal. Also getting sucked into the dynamic of being in these intimate relationships that feel like more like parent to child than actually adult to adult. That's another Cancer trap as well. Because you are an innate healer. Therefore, through the law of synchronicity to put you on a particular track to be learning what you're supposed to be learning as a healer, you will therefore attract the wounded. And that includes in your close relationships as well. It includes the 3-legged dog that shows up on your doorstep. It includes the grouchy curmudgeon of a cat, of the neighbor's cat who jumps on your lap, but nobody else's. They sense this healer archetype in you, but also in humans too, in adults. And that can create codependent relationships that aren't built on equal ground. So, what's the medicine? What's the balance point? North Node in Cancer, your medicine. Cancer ultimately is about self-healing and self-nurturing. And if you've been in any of your relationships in your life, falling in the dark side of the mother archetype, another one, endlessly giving and never healing yourself. Hiding behind the mask of the mother is another potential. Makes me think of being on an airline flight. Before the flight takes off, they're doing the security check through or instructions. And they say, in the event of an emergency, if the oxygen mask falls, put the mask on yourself first before your child. And the reason for that's pretty obvious. You're in the process of putting it on your child and you pass out, everybody loses. So looking at your life and seeing where am I always putting the mask on other people and not my own in my close relationships is a good question now too. Open and honestly. Now, North Node, yes, it's in Cancer, it's about healing, but first house. We get some critical clues here. Into healing through claiming your own needs. It's the house of personal power. It's the house of decision making. It's the house of standing up for yourself. Practicing some selfishness instead of some shellfishness. I just made that up. Laughing at my own joke here.
I love it.
So, first house, 7th house, relationship, personal freedom. First house, the house of independence. And as I said, the more the development of your own personal power. Asking, maybe even demanding for more respect for your own autonomy, claiming your own autonomy. A interdependent relationship that's not predicated on you agreeing upon everything. where your autonomy and freedom are honored. Or maybe you need to claim some more freedom. Maybe it's like, don't hide behind the shell of the crab. Be yourself. Don't hide behind the shell of the crab or the mother archetype. Now, for those of you who are living alone, maybe you don't, we're kind of all isolated here. Maybe you're by yourself in your house. Maybe, you don't have a lot of family relationships. I'd be surprised because Cancer is, all about that, But maybe we can look at it more broadly and say maybe your healing lies in taking some decisive action that in your heart of hearts you've needed to do, or maybe you haven't been doing because you've been giving too much power to other people close to you in your life who may not agree. Or maybe you're fearful of their perceived judgments upon that direction. And if it's not even involving other people, just through the law of synchronicity, having this North Node in the first house, some critical decision points may bump up in your life over the next month. But the more you do that, the more you claim more for yourself, the more you exercise what I call enlightened selfishness. This is my life. I choose it to live the way I want to. Yeah. If you want to come along with me, thank you. I've wanted that. If not, goodbye, It's like bringing more of those martial qualities. I mean, first house has a lot of resonance with the first sign of the zodiac, Aries, becoming more warrior-like and claiming that independence within relationship so that you have time to lick your own wounds, okay? To put the oxygen mask on yourself instead of other people. And the more you do that, the faster you evolve. And the faster you evolve, you help the evolution of everybody because we're all interconnected here, in which you as everybody's playing a critical role. The North Node is so important. I call it the point of enlightenment, because if you master your North Node, which by the way is not easy, but if you do that, you'll put your personal growth and evolution into hyperdrive. So that's the evolutionary intention through the lens of evolutionary astrology. And at this point, I'd love to pass the microphone over to you, Lotta.
Thank you so much, Bryan.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. I even forgot what I was going to talk about because I kept thinking about everything you said. And I've been observing for the past year and a half, a lot of Cancer, Sun, Cancer rising people start coming into their power, exactly what you were talking about. And instead of trying to rely on a partner, trying to embrace and understand who they are. And especially in the last couple of months when the Cancer node is moving out, and by May it's going to move out of Cancer, it's ramped up. I see it more intensely now. I have 2 important Cancer people in my life, and they have come into claiming their power, understanding who they are, what they want, while for years they were relying on partners. So that was so spot on. And I will carry on now for May with the retrograde planets. We're going to have 3 of the visible planets, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter, going retrograde. They rule half of the areas in your life. There are 12 houses, 12 important areas in one's life. And Cancer and Sagittarius, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter rule 6 of those areas. But most intensely, they would impact 3 areas of your life that will start changing direction, that you'll start seeing a visceral transformation or change inside. Your point of view will start changing because, and I've put a little words back, what retrograde planets do. They make you reevaluate, they make you question, they make you dig deep, they make you look for alternative paths in those areas of your life, see things from a different perspective in those areas of your life. And that's the beginning of a process which is usually longer. By the time the planets turn direct, for some will be 40 days for Venus, for Saturn and Jupiter a few months. When they turn direct, you would integrate, you start this new chapter basically of your life in those areas. So Venus, let's start with Venus, is turning retrograde in your 12th house for the first time in 8 years. So 2012, Venus was retrograde again in your 12th house, Cancers. So maybe some events, looking back at 2012, I think it was around the summer again, that are relevant will prop up again. I even remember some people when they have Venus retrograde in the again in the same sign, they revisit old relationships or relationships that started 8 years ago, might have a closure or might have some kind of a rethinking, seen through a different experience. But Venus is going retrograde in your 12th house, and 12th house is very much connected to the past. As Bryan knows, as evolutionary astrologer, the 12th house is one of the houses of past lifetimes, or things that we lock in our subconscious and we've forgotten about, but they're right at the border of our consciousness, and they're controlling our actions in an unconscious way without us realizing. They're pulling the strings there. And you start from middle of May, maybe a little bit before that, things from the past will start coming back to your surface, things that you've forgotten about. They're especially connected to Venus, to relationships, to maybe you start thinking of a past love person, or you start things that you are not aware about relationship, they'll start popping up to the surface a bit more. You start questioning more. And Venus rules in your horoscope, in particular, 4th house, which is family. So things connected to the past from your family, something that happened that you've forgotten about in your childhood that you've buried, or some family karmas or some family patterns will start becoming almost like you introspectively. Even in your dreams, you start becoming aware, because the 12th house rules the dream life. You'll start becoming aware of certain patterns, of that the patterns that your ancestors have been living through generations and generations, or that happened in your early childhood, and you start reevaluating those. You'd also might want to conclude, because the 12th house is about letting go, releasing patterns connected to your family, to your childhood, the 4th house, things that you've learned from your mom, for example, and questioning them, reading more on psychological topics. 12th house is a very psychological house, coupled with the fact that Venus rules your 4th house of family, questioning. And some of you might even go into therapy. Some of you might go into therapy to explore those topics, those deeper memories that are coming to the surface, this connection with family, with ancestry, and how this creates underwater stones for you. And you're gonna love this process. It's Venus that's going there. You're gonna bask in it. You're gonna enjoy it almost. And it's not gonna be easy. Retrograde planet is never easy. It will ask you to confront things that you probably don't want to and work harder on it. But ultimately, the goal of Venus is to create more internal peace for you. The 12th house is the soul. The 12th house is the realm where your subconscious lives. So Venus wants to create more harmony in that subconscious ultimately. And it can do it by releasing with love. That's again the Venus quality. Patterns from the past that over 40 days, this is 40 days, you might feel a little bit like, you know, the Jewish lost in the desert for 40 years, but for 40 days that you're questioning all those past patterns, that you're wondering where is this all coming from. But ultimately, when Venus turns direct in your 12th house, you'd have released a lot of family, ancestral, childhood patterns that were blockage towards your self-love. Venus is a planet of self-love, towards your ability to receive easy in life, for things to flow easy, because the ultimate goal of Venus is to facilitate, to make things easy. But it's a very psychological process. And it also means about you turning within spiritually more. The retrograde planets are more introspective. They question. 12th house is spiritual, psychology. So a lot of you will start going back or re-examining or questioning, how do they take care of their soul? How do they nurture their soul? How do they, it's kind of in line also with the North Node for the last time, you know, in Cancer, which is again a nurturing soul sign. And the 12th house is about that. And some of you might start re-examining 12th house is about spirituality. So doing some spiritual techniques, spiritual that you've read about, that you've heard about, but you left behind, like spiritual practices that you're really gonna revel and enjoy and bask in, like becoming quiet, staying in nature, like meditating, like some other kind of, because also it's in Gemini. Gemini is more to read, to study, so you might prefer quiet time, because 12th house is quiet time that you really bask in and enjoy, which is Venus, in your own private time, studying about spiritual topics, about psychological topics, exploring all those. On a more material level, 12th house is hidden relationships in Vedic astrology. And Venus going retrograde there, you might revisit an old love and start secretly, and not announce it publicly, but reconnect with someone from the past that you haven't been in touch, and start texting or chatting, which is very Geminian, communicating in some way, talking about those old feelings. If you're not directly reconnecting, you'll be talking and thinking and trying to understand that past relationship. But there is a possibility for some of you to have intimate experience that is kind of hidden, private. And there is a possibility as well that 12th house is the house of bed pleasures in Vedic astrology, which is connected to sensuality, especially because the house of imagination and fantasies, revisiting some old fantasies of yours, or even getting an opportunity even to experience them, to experiment with them, which is Gemini, and Venus, or just to relive them in your head somehow. And the 12th house is known also the house of hidden support when a benefic is transiting there, and Venus going retrograde there, and it can indicate that a good deed that you did in the past to someone, maybe now someone, a supporter that likes you that you're not aware of, possibly a woman because it's Venus, can give you a helping hand without you expecting it. It's like a karmic good payback in some way. Maybe some support, unexpected support by such forces, or spiritual support from a past loving person that is Venusian in nature, a woman, or, someone very loved to you, reconnecting in your dreams with them, in your sleep with them in some way, receiving messages from departed loved ones, reconnecting to spirit guides, that we've forgotten that they are angels, delving deeper in those spiritual connections. And also the 12th house has its material side as well, which is faraway journeys. So maybe if you had to, to retrograde planet means to redo, to go and do it. Maybe some journey you couldn't do, now it will come back and you'll be able to redo it. It's also connected to any activities that are in faraway places. And Venus going retrograde there can a little bit bring those things back to your focus, but you have to work extra hard, whether it's investing in faraway lands, whether it's because Venus is connected to money as well, trade with faraway lands because it's in Gemini, it's a sign that's very business oriented, deals connected to faraway lands or foreigners that can come back to be reworked on or fixed, or something changed about that, something improved in some way during the Venus retrograde period, and you see what mistakes were done there so you can make it in a better way, or you can, or if it's not valid, it's just going to fall through. What else? Well, there are many things about the 12th house. Research. You can really bask and start enjoying researching something, going back to some deeper research. And when planet goes retrograde, you really deepen it. You really dig deep about that. So some people that are scientists or researchers or astrologers like us can have amazing insight, and Venus makes it easier to give you those insights for whatever research you're doing. But you have to put 3 times more effort, so 3 times more time, 3 times longer time spent on that, more time in that area of your life. Okay, so there's a lot of more other things. I don't want to make this too long. But then you're gonna have Cancer, Saturn going retrograde in your 8th house for the first time in 30 years, 29 years or something. And it's gonna repeat 2 more times over the next couple of years, but it's the first taste you're gonna get of Saturn retrograde in your 8th house for the next 4 months, I think. Yeah, something like that. And what can I say? Okay, on the material level, it's mutual finances and resources. So there might be you having to reevaluate your resources with your partner. Maybe there might be the need to tighten your financial situation, or maybe not receiving as much support from a partner. And because of that, you have to basically work a bit harder when it comes to financial matters. Or sometimes I've seen when this happens, one's partner either changes jobs and receives more money, or they're studying, so you have to support them more. But the process is starting when you need to support more a partner somehow, to put extra work together in your mutual resources and finances. And if it's a business, it means some kind of, especially business always has partners, business partnerships, and the mutual finances and resources of those business partnerships is the eighth house. So again, some kind of restructuring of the whole situation there. Money, sometimes when Saturn goes retrograde, can create definitely a crisis in those in financial situation, in mutual resources, who gives more, who takes more, how to make it more fair in the long term. But the final results, you're going to see them within 2 years from now, when Saturn moves out of this eighth house, and the hard restructuring that you've been doing over a couple of years and a bit will give its results. Eighth house is also our traumas. You're starting a process that will stretch for 2 years and a half. That's very deep, of trying to work through our traumas and trying to work. And usually Saturn slows it down, but makes you really focus on it and work deep on it. But you might not be able to see the healing and see the immediate result so fast. It's a long purging process with Saturn. It's like, it's Saturn in the eighth house, like gives you constipation, psychologically, emotionally, and you have to work through that and push for about 2 years. So again, very good time when people start digging into their past, in their traumas, with the whether with astrology, with the cult sciences, with ecology, with deep questioning, with the new scientific advances. Even, it's Aquarius after all, this eighth house, but trying to process their traumas. I don't want to discourage you, but it takes about 2 years to finally. But you're gonna receive help from next year. Jupiter is entering there, on that process. And also, it can indicate on a more material level, it's your taxes. You have to put extra effort when Saturn goes retrograde about your taxes, about matters concerning insurances, inheritances. You might have to refile or fix something or correct something, or some complications arises there that you have to work on for the next few months. But the most intense period is when the planet turns retrograde. It becomes most obvious then. And hopefully you'd work through it by the time Saturn turns direct in September, I think. Of course, the eighth house is the house of sexuality, but in a sense, like Bryan says, what did you say is the eighth house? Like the deeper, the mystery of the...
Yeah, the mystery of the couple, the mystery that makes couples form. I call it the house of deep bonding. So it's a lot. It's about psychological depth of connection. If somebody has a very eighth house relationship, they get to know each other much quicker than, a normal subset of humans, I guess you could say, just the level of, they do some psychological deep diving together. Whereas the fifth house is more eroticism when we're talking about sex. It's really the two faces of sex, different approaches.
So how do you think the Saturn retrograde in the eighth house will play out psychologically for the deep sexual side for Cancer?
It's, as you said, it's slow. I liked what you said about constipated. Although connecting that to sex is a little weird. It likes to slow things down. But the great prize, and although it's very difficult, Saturn's always difficult, creating kind of a blockage there. You're trying to break free from those. There's that word for Aquarius. Saturn's in Aquarius. So the motivation, which is a sign component here, the motivation for freedom, okay, through the hard work of doing your deep psychological work with your close partnerships. And it's not easy, but the great prize, Saturn always represents a great prize, and that's a deeper level of commitment than you ever experienced before. And it may take 2 years, it may be really slow and excruciating at times, but when you come out the other end, you will feel more free, you'll have a stronger sense of integrity and a deeper bond with the couple.
Beautifully said. I love that. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, of
I should
course.
have made you do the whole month instead of me blabbering here.
No, no, it's good. It's good, different styles. I love that we're blending this. So I really appreciate the collaboration. I've never done this before, and it's really fun for me. So thank you.
Oh, I'm enjoying it so much as well. Thank you. And indeed, it will be about relationships because Saturn rules your seventh house, Cancers, and going retrograde in the eighth house, you'll be working on these deeper connections and the fears that you have about letting someone merge with you on a deeper level. A lot of Cancers have such fears because Saturn rules their seventh house. They're very emotional people, but they wall themselves up. And often they attract more cold-hearted partners, or partners that are more frigid sometimes even. And you're going to be working through those issues with Saturn going retrograde. A lot of psychological purging, I call it, but it's not going to be a fast purging. um, and then Jupiter is going retrograde in your seventh house. So again, relationship house. And what can we say? Okay, let's see the most superficial things is that partnership from the past can come back. You can reconnect with someone you haven't been in touch. And this can give you, expand your consciousness and understanding in what the purpose and the meaning of that relationship was. Jupiter wants to give meaning. And it can also mean someone that you haven't seen in a while. And like Brian says, people that you go to your funerals with, basically, someone dear to you will reappear in your life, not necessarily a marriage partner or love partner, just someone that is important for you. You can reconnect with them. On another level, if you're in a relationship, it can create the need to question things philosophically, from does this relationship satisfy and fulfill my deepest soul yearnings, and does it create meaning in my life, does it create purpose in my life, or re-examining a relationship with different eyes, putting on, seeing it in an alternative light in regards to what is this relationship bringing to me, how is it making me grow. Maybe even seeing your partner in a new light by the time Jupiter turns retrograde. And usually, often a retrograde period can start with some mini crisis. For a person to start asking questions, something needs to first go a little bit wrong, or to turn direction. And that's what puts us in this questioning phase and transformational phase. It can also indicate that a business deal that you've been working on can come back now. You can complete it, or it can mean resuming contact with people. The seventh house is connected to contact with other people, but it can indicate that your partner or the marriage partner or something is going through some kind of reevaluation of their own, or some big change in their life. They're changing direction in some way, and this impacts you directly as well. This impacts the relationship directly as well. Or some opportunity from the past is coming back from your partner. You see, there can be some very positive ways this works. And they say when Jupiter is in the seventh house, you can get married or start a relationship, but you can also get divorced, especially during retrograde periods, because you start questioning, is this the right place? Is this the right person? Does this give me joy? But if you separate with Jupiter in the seventh house, it's usually like a release. It's usually, honestly, Jupiter can be very liberating. It's like it's bringing joy to your soul. And such kind of themes are definitely going to be around you. They can play very superficially, they can play out very on the outside, or they can play very deeply as well. But let's see, write your comments, what is happening in your life with this retrograde, with those 3 retrogrades, and are you feeling the last lessons of, and how are you integrating the lessons of Saturn, of South Node and North Node in your sign and in Capricorn. And if you'd like to learn how to read your past life karma, within just one webinar of 4 hours, Bryan is making it on the 16th of May, and it's reduced price of 30% till the day of the webinar. It's only $62. Thank you so much, Bryan.
Thank you, Lada.
For
It was a
joining
pleasure.
me. Looking forward to that webinar, and it was fantastic hearing what you said about cancers. Thank you.
Thank you.